My life took me places that I could not have possibly imagined.
What do you think is the hardest decision you had to make in the field under pressure?
He had millions of rounds of ammo, and they shot a lot of them at us. I've worked with all the Five Eyes, the ally intelligence agencies.
US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand.
Yes. The Chinese came in. They have been brilliant in colonizing the world, knowing my background. If it all goes to hell, what would you do? I would say,
if you want someone tortured, you send them to Syria. If you want them disappeared, you send them to Egypt. If you want them interrogated, you send them to Jordan.
I've been to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people that I didn't necessarily think were bad. When people find out what happened, I don't know how to explain it, except that it's baffling. I've got some crazy arms steel stories for you.
You were drinking a lot.
War is always bad, and I've been in a shitload of it.
What kind of kid grows up willingly running toward gunfire, essentially?
I don't know. I didn't. I grew up a poet. I always wanted to be a writer. I had never had any interest in that world.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that world. And where I came from in northern New Hampshire, growing up in northern New Hampshire, it was as far away as anybody could be. I never knew anybody in the military. I think my uncle got into West Point, but he had to go to like a prep school for a year to go, and he backed out. I never knew anybody in the military. And I did not think that was my path. I wanted to write, be a poet. I wanted to play music. I wanted to do things other. And I went that way. So I don't know the answer because it wasn't me.
I see.
I found that in life. It wasn't me. I wasn't born to that.
I mean, you ended up becoming that person, essentially.
I definitely ended up becoming that person, yeah.
What did your upbringing teach you about danger or resilience? Because you didn't just magically become this warlord chasing security contractor in Somalia, right? In Afghanistan.
Yeah, I wasn't really a security contractor. I mean,
I was trying to find the industry term for this, but yeah, what would you call it?
Entrepreneur. I built a company from scratch, and I had 4,000 people. So I suppose I contracted for security. Yeah. But it was my company, so I would look at it from your perspective as an entrepreneur. But the answer is kind of complex, and I think part of it is that I think, I wrote in that book that I was born whole into a life fully formed. I'm not really, we're not going to get into a conversation about philosophy necessarily, but I think that we open ourselves to certain things in life, and certain things find us in life. My life took me places that I could not have possibly imagined at any stage leading up to it, right? So, and I've heard you talk about this before. I think we set ourselves up for those of us that want adventure, those of us that want to go out and do things in the world. I don't think there's a path. There's not a linear path to finding the things that I've done in my life. But I think the question you ask about growing up is, when I was a kid, there was no TV, there was no internet, there was no phones, there was nothing. It was the outdoors. I'd get up in the morning and I'd ski, I'd rock climb, I'd hike, I would stay outdoors for long periods of time, and it built an independence, and it built an ability to survive in all kinds of situations. And those gave me the freedom, I think, to thrive in adventure.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
Yeah, some of it's wiring, I suppose, too. Right? It's just it has to be.
It's got to be a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a different. I mean, your version of a bad Monday is not spilling coffee, right? It's dodging bullets. That's a different kind of office politics, I think, than most people are used to. So the initial ingredients have to be a little different.
And I would say that I think dodging bullets is relatively easy. Lots and lots of people go into law enforcement. They go into the military. They go into situations that could end up there. But for me, the dodging bullets was not the part. It was being in a situation where there were bullets and trying to find a way to create challenges within that environment and overcome those challenges. That was my gig. The bullets are easy. I mean, people get wound up about gunfire. At the end of the day, the probability of getting hit in a gunfight are so infinitesimally small. They say during the Civil War that it took a man's weight in bullets before one hit him, on average.
So the trick is to be as heavy as possible.
Exactly right. But the bottom line, in my estimation, is that when you think gunfire is loud, it's really friggin' loud, and it becomes exponentially more when you put in bombs and everything else that goes along with it. So combat environments are incredibly loud, and they're loud because of percussion, and the percussion is overwhelming. When you realize that it's one tiny little pill going through the air, and it's going straight based on gravity, it gives you a different perspective. Yeah. So if you can take the noise out of it, if you can reduce variability, in my experience, you've got much, much better odds of success. And it's like that in life. anything. If you can reduce the noise in a car race or a corporate office building or a sporting event, if you can reduce the distraction, the variability of noise, in my experience, it's much more manageable. So it's learning those things.
If you wanted to be a musician and kind of, the poetry thing, how did you end up in the FBI? That's like the squarest place for a non-square to be.
Well, it's not the case now, but when I was a kid, being a writer was a real thing. It was something you would aspire to, right?
Sure.
It's not now. I mean, everybody can write everything, and there's no grammar, there's no capital letters. My book agent, one of the best book agents in the world, he sends me these text messages. They're illegible, right? It was a thing, right? I wanted to be Ernest Hemingway and all the guys in that era.
Sure.
So my career path was to write. I mean, you could say you're a writer, but you got to write.
Yeah.
So it took me through things: newspaper reporter, English teacher at a boarding school, and along with that, I like to play guitar. So you take poetry, guitar, you got music, then you've got you're writing stuff. It all goes together.
Yeah.
Art's art.
Yeah, your book is full of stories, like the kinds of stories you hear at a family party as a kid, and then when your mom's trying to get you to leave the room, and you're
stay away from that guy,
and you're like, no, I want to hear this, and then after everyone leaves, your mom and your aunt are like, don't listen to anything Uncle Chris says. No. He's just kidding.
Stay away from
He's
that
just
guy.
kidding, honey.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what the book reminded me of, because I was just like, this is the one where all the kids are like, Uncle Chris is here. Oh my God, he's gonna let us drink beer. I don't know, whatever. And tell us, about the time he saw guys playing soccer with a dude's head or something. And you're like, the mom's like, don't tell them the head thing again.
Yeah.
He had nightmares for 3 months. Like,
don't
worry, I got a lot of news stories.
Get a lot of that from my own kids. Right?
Yeah, sure.
That's part of it.
Yeah. Oh, man. You were part of the elite hostage rescue team. So HRT, tell us what that is, because most people don't even know that exists.
Yeah, and thanks for asking the questions the way you ask them, Jordan. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time, man. I dig the stuff that you do.
I appreciate that.
But I think the problem is when I talk to people, it's very difficult to explain things because, like I was talking to my mother one time, and she was saying something about racists, and she was saying those racist military people. And I said, Mom, what are you talking about? Racist military people? And she said, well, they all have guns and racism, it all goes together. But that was my mother, who lived with these stories for all these years. My point is this, that explaining the way the world works takes a minute. And I use it as a continuum. So in law enforcement, there's a crossing guard, and then you've got people at the far extreme at the other side. And this group, the hostage rescue team, is the far end at the other side. So in order to get into it, you've got to join the FBI, which at the time was difficult when I joined. Trump has changed that recently, apparently. And
so it's easier now?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen what I've seen on the internet, so it has to be true, right?
Huh. Yeah. Nobody would lie online.
Nobody would lie, but apparently Kash Patel's making changes which include reducing the time at the academy and the qualifications. When I joined, it was difficult to get in. Once you get in, you have to try out for this team. At the time, there were about 13,000 FBI agents, and there were 50 members of this team.
Wow.
And they have a selection once a year, and sometimes they take one guy. Sometimes they take 5 or more. At the time, it was very, very difficult to get in. Now it's harder.
Yeah.
They're extraordinary people. So they're very highly educated. They're world-class athletes. They're world-class shooters. They're all those things. But the thing that distinguishes them is their ability to make decisions under stress. So just to give it in perspective, you have police organizations, federal, state, and local. The LAPD, the California State Police, Highway Patrol, I think it is. Then you've got the federal agencies, one of which would be the FBI. There are 18,000 of those organizations in the United States. 18,000? Yeah, campus cops and all these different organizations.
I guess that makes sense, but it just sounds like a lot.
Right. So at the end of the day, a lot of people would think, well, who's going to come if everything else fails? And many, many people think it's the FBI. And that's evolved over time, but that's the way it was. So within that construct, if something really bad happens, it's likely it's going to be the FBI that comes in and saves the day because they have the resources. It's not necessarily that they're better. They have, I don't know what it was. I think the last budget was $8 to $10 billion.
Okay.
Huge amounts of money, right? Staggering amounts of money. And those resources give you the ability to do things. Within that framework, that's civilian law enforcement. Then you have the military, which is a war-fighting capability for the United States government. The military has 2 organizations. SEAL Team 6, or Dev Group, and the guys that got bin Laden, and Delta Force on the Army side. Those 2 groups were put together in the 70s as a counterterrorism mechanism, a violent mechanism to resolve terrorist issues, like the Olympic Games in Munich, where hostages were taken, and they came out of that. So when the government when the United States hosted the Olympic Games in 1984 in Los Angeles, we're getting up on another one now, but the last time we did that.
That was 1984? I thought Sarajevo was 1984. Can we check this?
Yeah, let's check it. No, I think it had to be 84, but let's check it. So the U.S. government didn't want to have another Munich Games. So they said, well, who are we going to rely upon if something goes bad? They went to Delta and SEAL Team 6, which would have been the likely choices.
It was in L.A., but now I'm like, when was the... when the hell was Sarajevo?
I don't know. I've been to Sarajevo, but long after the shit was blown up.
Winter Olympics were in Sarajevo.
Okay,
so that's why.
So the government, the Attorney General of the United States said, look, we got to take care of this thing. They went to Delta at Fort Bragg, saw a demonstration, and he said, fantastic, that's remarkable, but I don't see any handcuffs. One of the operators famously said, we don't need handcuffs, they all get two right here.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in civilian law enforcement. There's a law called the Posse Comitatus, post-Civil War, that says the U.S. government cannot use the military in civilian law enforcement.
Right.
You get a hostage situation on Santa Monica Boulevard, you can't send Delta to get them in. So they created a third, more or less equivalent at the time, group, and they had to put it someplace outside the military. They put it in the FBI.
I see.
So they took from the FBI to staff this counterterrorism team, and they built it in the model of Delta at Fort Bragg. So that's where the hostage rescue team came from.
I see. So it's basically a special forces group that can operate domestically in the United States and under law enforcement as opposed to the military.
Correct, but also internationally.
Oh, it does operate internationally.
And this is why it's so difficult to explain. When I joined the team prior, in the 80s and 90s when this team was stood up, law enforcement or terrorism was considered law enforcement mechanism. If a bad guy did something with a bomb or hijacked a plane, the U.S. government would go after them, arrest them, prosecute them, and put them in jail. After 9/11, we just killed them.
Yeah.
Indiscriminately in war. It's a different mechanism. Yeah. Right? But prior to that, we did that, and we, under two laws from the 1980s, the HRT got all the gigs. So if you've heard of renditions, where we go into a foreign country and snatch somebody, that team, we did all of the renditions.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Prior to 9/11.
Oh, prior to 9/11, because I was going to say the ones after 9/11 are the ones where that everyone says, hey, you can't just take somebody from Egypt and put them in Syria.
As it turns out, you can.
It turns out you can.
Oddly enough,
yeah,
you can. And
if you have enough guns, you can do that.
Right. And the first one that ever happened, you can Google this. It's called Goldenrod, and it was '86, I think. It was early '80s, and it was a joint agency FBI operation for this guy named Fawaz Yunus, who gave up terrorism, took up drug dealing in Beirut, and they lured him offshore in a boat, and then scuba dived basically up to the boat, snatched him, and flew him back to the United States.
Oh, wow.
And it went from there. And there have been, at the time, there were quite a few. Now it's, relatively commonplace.
Yeah.
And now you use a drone to sink the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, why bother going to get it? But now it all makes sense. If you want to prosecute him,
you get a little nostalgic for the old days, but that was it. But anyway, so that was my era. That was a long time ago. They're an extraordinary organization that has evolved from those days. What I did, I probably wouldn't even make the team now. They're really extraordinary in ways that we didn't even know.
It's interesting you say that. I talked to a lot of old special forces guys from like the 60s and 70s. I guess not as many are around anymore, but some of them. And they're like, oh, you would have loved it. And I'm like, oh, I can't run 10 miles with a breathing mask on in the snow with no shoes. And they're like, we didn't have to do any of that. What are you talking about? You have to shoot. You have to be able to make decisions. You have to be smart and think. But I'm like, you know what the selection criteria is for some of these units now? It's like 70-mile rucks, and they're like, ugh, no.
Well, that's
thanks.
Delta. But you got to remember, there's a continuum there as well. So you could go into the military, then you could go into the Army, then you go into the Rangers, and then you could go. Eventually, you might make it to Delta. But the Special Operations Community, JSOC, is large. It's complex. But when you get to the far end of that, you do have to run 70 miles with an 80-pound pack barefoot in the winter. Yeah. With a mask on.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
It sounds awful. But at that point, the training is no longer really physical because they're just trying to break you and see if you can still function?
No. You have to function. The training, the physical training is crazy.
It's insane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to stay that condition the entire time you're there. But, I mean, on this team that I was on, we would fast rope. Fast rope is just slide down a gym rope out of a helicopter, under bad situations.
Sure.
And a significant number of people have died just in training.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous job, day in and day out.
Yikes. Yeah, another guest on the show, he joined the SEALs and he couldn't swim very well.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, but he made it, and then they were like, now we got to teach you how to swim. But it took him like 4 tries, and he had, what is it called, like when you rhabdo, where you overtrain and your muscles start to, they're so decayed you can't function and you get poisoned from the lactic.
It's complex. It's hard. There's a different type of guy that it's a different type of person psychologically.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can have a basic physical ability. It's got to be basic. I mean, better than basic.
Yeah.
You got to be fast. You got to be strong at these things. But you have to have a mechanism that shuts off the quit mechanism. You've got to have a different psychology. It's more psychology and decision making than it is shooting or physical. It's not about push-ups and pull-ups and swimming, and it's not about those things at all.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my friends is Ben Greenfield, is like a really athletic guy. That's an understatement. He wins these like the Tough Mudders and all these competitions. So he did like a special forces pseudo training thing, and they had to make it harder for him. Like they would dunk you in a tank of water and people would panic, and then he was, fine. So they were like, okay, well now you can only breathe through a straw.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And so he said it was a hell on earth, but
you get really good at being miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can tolerate, everything is miserable.
Yeah.
That element is, and then you go sleep under a rock for a week with no food.
Ugh.
Right? I mean, it kind of sucks. But there are rewards as well.
So, I mean, it's like CrossFit with live ammunition and fewer Instagram posts, I guess.
Yeah, no Instagram posts.
Yeah, not back then.
Yeah.
You mentioned the firefights and the shootouts and stuff like that. I'm wondering what goes through your head in a situation like that. Like, what are you thinking when you're going to gunfight, or is it?
I always looked at fights, again, I hate to continue all the time, but it starts with, when I was a kid, you would fight all the time. It's just what you did. Somebody calls you a name, you punch them in the nose, you roll around a little bit,
right.
You buy them a Coke and, go back to school. And then you go to high school and, I lived in an era, in a place where fighting was not necessarily a really bad thing. It was just part of the way you resolve things. Now we look at things differently, right?
Yeah.
But I always said it doesn't matter if you fight, if you're trying to hurt somebody with your words, or if you punch them in the nose, or if somebody picks up a rock or a knife or a 2x4 or a gun. It's an escalation and you get a nuclear bomb, right? So it's all a fight. In my estimation, the one-on-one intimacy of a fight, however that may be, with a gun or with a fist or whatever the case may be, is very different than a war situation. Because in a war, I remember very clearly, I had this one perception that I didn't have a clue who to go after first. Like you're in a situation where you have more than one target and you have more than one threat, and you've got to make a decision on who gets it first. Like I always wondered what it was like to be in a D-Day or Gettysburg or something where you have thousands of people, or the Peloponnesian War or whatever, when you have large groups of people running each other and you got to pick one person and you got to go after that one person. And that's difficult. That's different. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. I can't imagine being also, they're basically sending kids into these situations.
Yeah,
too.
that's right.
That's the other thing, is like you're 19 and they're like run at the beach and you're like, I don't really want to do that. And it's like, okay, well, you're going to get shot in this boat for sure.
I mean, imagine that kind of courage. Imagine the countless thousands of people, just Americans, not other countries, just Americans in the last 250 years have gone to war at 18 years of age with no clue what to do or how to do it, very little training. I mean, it's crazy, that kind of commitment, sacrifice, and courage. It's wild.
Only kids who are I hit a certain point, I can't remember how old I was, maybe like 30, or maybe I was 28, and I was like, I can actually die.
Yeah.
And I was like, ew, this is an uncomfortable feeling. I didn't have that for the decade prior.
Yeah.
You need to find people who are in that decade, and then they're like, I've seen enough movies to know that I'm going to make it out of this. That's what happens to the main character.
That's the first thing. I remember the training for that first unit that I was part of, and they came up with this stuff called simunitions, which is using real guns, real bullets.
Yeah, with the yellow plasticky thing on it.
They shoot choke down paint pills, right? It's not paintball, it's real guns. But we would start running CQB with those, so you get tagged, and then you go, I would have survived that. And it changes your thinking.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it really dramatically improves your sense of survivability. And if you think you're going to survive and you're going to accomplish the mission, you're much, much more capable of doing it. Once you take the magic out of anything, the first time I mean, whatever people in life, they say, well, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. Once they learn the clue, a magic trick. You learn the key, all of a sudden it takes the magic out and it's a different thing altogether.
It reminds me of boxing. I took a couple boxing lessons, and the coach was like, here's the problem. You're afraid of getting hit. And I was it's going to hurt. He's like, wham. And I was like, ah. He's like, you're fine. You didn't even fall. And I said, that's true. And he goes, that's going to happen a bunch. It's fine, right? And I was like, all right. And then he's hitting me and I'm blocking it. And he's like, now that you're not afraid, you can go forward when somebody is going to hit you instead of just curling up and waiting for them to be done and get tired. Because that was kind of my strategy before was, I don't want to look at it. It's going to hurt, and he's just batting me in the head. And he's like, you should probably do something instead of just stand there and get hit. So that sounds like it with the simunitions. It's like, okay, all right, you got shot in the arm. So now you should probably shoot back at that guy and, charge forward instead of just standing there while he's aiming the gun at you.
Well, in fairness to these guys, if they ever watch this thing and say, get this guy Whitcomb to stop talking about us, he doesn't even know. But in the day, everybody was very good at shooting, fighting, and if necessary, dying. Right, that was it. But it was all about the mission. This team that I was on, this is interesting because I got a question for you. It was interesting because the first 3 years I was on this team, we had everybody. We had our own surgeons. We had our own. We had a medical component so that when somebody did get hurt, we could deal with it.
That's probably a good
in-house. Idea. It was a good idea.
In-house.
But listen to this. The first 3 years I was on this team, there was no immediate action drill for somebody going down.
What does that mean? Oh, I see.
I mean, if you and I go through that door at 4 o'clock in the morning and you take a flyer and you go down, I didn't stop to take care of you like in medics in the military.
Oh.
I would jump over you and go and accomplish a mission. For 3 years, nobody ever talked about helping anybody. You would go back after it was over. So it was a different type of thinking. But one thing I want to bring up, I watched the show where you're talking about the situation in Mexico, and you're in the backseat of that car, in the backseat of the taxi cab.
Yeah.
And I think you make a really brilliant point that very, very few people look at in life writ large, that most people who are not familiar with a crisis don't know when to make the decision that it is a crisis and get involved. So many people through the history of time have pushed it up to the point where it was too late.
Yeah.
And you made a fascinating statement about when you decided to get engaged and you put yourself in a position where you could interact with the threat with no training whatsoever.
Right.
So I find that really fascinating.
You're talking about, so for people who don't know, this is when I got kidnapped by the taxi in Mexico, and there was no smartphones. So I wasn't screwing around looking at Instagram chicks or whatever. And I was looking out the window and realized we were going the wrong way. And then I asked the guy to drop me off, and he said no. That was a big red flag. And I remember thinking, I can't be getting kidnapped because that's never happened to me before. And then immediately going, that doesn't make any sense. Right. Why would, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it can't happen. And also, if people get kidnapped and they get killed as a result, well, then they're not talking about that. So maybe I should pay attention. That's what you're talking about, right?
I am talking about it because it applies to absolutely everything in life. I don't care what it is, a motorcycle race, and you brought up that, or whatever the situation. Many people, I think it's just built in to mammals, get to a point, everybody knows fight or flight, but getting to fight or flight is what is a problem for so many people in society. Once you get to the point where it's fight or flight, it's probably too late. I mean, you're running or you're fighting, but you might be dying. So it doesn't matter. But it could be anything. I mean, you're selling a house and you're negotiating, and there's a moment where you go, this has never happened before, and you get engaged. When human beings can anticipate variability, look at all that risk, and make decisions early, they're going to get themselves... They're going to be so much happier with the decision making, and that's something I learned very early.
Yeah, I think there's so many times when I look back and I go, oh, if I'd maybe not been so afraid to challenge this particular thing or engage a little bit more or dive in a little bit more, I would do it. I would redo it again. Do it again in a different way. That's for sure.
People want to duck their head, put their head in the sand, and it doesn't go well. Most often, it does not go well. So anticipation is very big.
What do you think is the hardest decision you had to make in the field under pressure?
The hardest decision?
Yeah.
I don't know right off the top of my head, but I would say that thing I talked about in the book, for those who haven't read it, I wrote a book about my life in that world from basically from 9/11 until now.
Yeah, anonymous mail. It'll be linked in the show notes.
The bottom line is this. I ended up creating these situations where more and more difficult. And I ended up on on an intelligence community gig in Somalia. So I flew to Nairobi. I hired a Cessna 182B. I flew into Baidoa, Somalia when they stood up the government. I was there for when they made Somalia a country. Lasted about 3 weeks. I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never heard of that city, but maybe because it's not under government
It wasn't
control.
a city. It was a patch of dirt you could land in.
Okay.
And it was a warehouse that had been blown up so many times, the roof, they gathered the government and the United Nations in this one building, and it only had half a roof because the other roof had been blown off. It had a dirt floor. And anyway, I was there when that happened. I got stuck there, and I ended up I think it was about 3 weeks later in Mogadishu.
Okay.
This was after the first Battle of Mogadishu, which was Black Hawk Down, and the U.S. government pulled out. And it was a very short time before the second Battle of Mogadishu, which I helped precipitate to a certain degree. So I ended up in the second best airport in Mogadishu, which was called K-50, and K-50 had been an old Russian landing strip. And I had to get out of the country, and I couldn't get out of the country. I was supposed to get out on one of the COT flights. They have this group called Bluebird Air in Nairobi that would fly COT or Mira. It's like a Copenhagen type thing that everybody stays high on.
Oh, COT. Yeah, the stuff that you put in your lip like chew, but it's super addictive and you build a tolerance and...
It's real bad for you.
It's real bad for you.
Yeah,
and it rots your teeth out.
Right. And if you get an AK-47 and you're 13 years old, it's even less good for you or the people around you, which is the whole country. So I went in on my own. I was supposed to get a ride out on one of these COT flights. That didn't happen because changes were made with the people that were paying me. It went bad. So anyways, I ended up in Mogadishu, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, whatever the case was. And it was just me. I had a technical. I had a team. I had my own army.
Okay.
It's a technical is it's an old Toyota pickup truck.
It's a Hilux usually.
It's a Hilux.
They love those.
Yeah, they love them. Well, it's because they run forever.
They do.
Right?
But if you see a Hilux, when I saw a Hilux not in like a dirty war zone with a machine gun welded to it, I was like, oh. People actually drive
that's what
these?
that is.
Yeah, this is what it's supposed to look like when it has paint on it.
Why is Toyota financing all these wars around the world? But they're everywhere, right?
Yeah, the Taliban vehicle of choice.
So I had one of those welded in the back. It's called a DSHK.
Yeah, the Dushka or whatever.
A Dushka, which means sweetheart in Russian.
Yeah.
So they call it sweetheart. So I had a Dushka, and I had guys with AKs and whatever else. But I got to I was actually in an old Toyota Corolla that got shot up at a roadblock trying to get there. So I get to Moog. I got $600 in my sock. That's all I had left because there's no money. There's no military.
No ATMs.
There's nothing. There's nothing. I mean, it's bombed flat. It's an inhospitable location. I'd been there a long time. And so I get to this airport, and there's an old plane on the runway, like you see in the old D.B. Cooper thing where he jumped, like the stairs come down in the back.
Yeah.
And I could see it in the distance, and somebody told me I could get on that plane. That's why I went there. It was like 2.5 or 3 hour drive from Baidoa. So it was over. My car left. My technical was gone. I had $600 in my, and I'm surrounded by all these guys staring at me going, who the is that guy?
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of what kept me alive because nobody wanted to make a decision to take me if I worked for their boss. Like there's 7 guys and they're all vying for whatever.
Right. Who's going to kidnap this guy and hold him for ransom?
You might get a raise,
right?
You might get an extra $1 a month. But you might get your head chopped off with a butter knife too. So, and that's not even really an exaggeration. You don't want to make decisions like that. And so, anyways, I end up there, and I had zero options. I had $600 in a passport. They came out. This guy came out and took my $600. And when I say airport, it's not an airport. There was a blue tarp that sold Nestle water and it's like top ramen noodles you could eat dry, and a bunch of starving. I don't want to make it sound. Less worse than it was, but it was bad. And there's this plane. So I know if I get on the plane, I'm going to survive. If I don't get on the plane, I'm not going to survive. I couldn't swim anywhere. And that was it. So anyways, they came, they took the $600, and now I have no money. And I don't know anybody. I don't have a ticket. I don't know that I'm getting on the plane. Then the guy comes back and searched me to see if I had any more money and took my passport. So now, now I'm in Mogadishu on my own, doing a gig with an agency, and I have nothing no money, no passport, no
shoelaces.
technical. Shoelaces, I could maybe strangle myself. I could do an Epstein on myself maybe if I,
That's the backup plan.
So that was a bad day. So that was, I think that was probably a point in my life where I said, you might want to tune this up a little bit. Maybe. But I did get on the plane. That's the bottom line.
Whose plane was it?
It was just a charter. Somebody flew a charter in. I still have no idea why or how. I have a ticket. They actually wrote up this little thing, and I saved it. And I don't, you build weird mementos in life, right? And so I walk out, and I got on the plane. They actually stopped the plane and pulled a guy off. Engines. The staircase goes up. I think I made it. I'm looking out the windows. This plane was so old you couldn't see out the windows because the glass had been bead blasted from landing in the sand.
Yeah, right? So it's all like what do you call it? Like opaque.
Opaque,
like, almost foggy because it's been sanded down.
Yeah, it's like just take sandpaper to the windshield of your Porsche 911, and
so you're looking at, you see the army or whatever it remains rolling up, and you're like, please don't be coming for me.
Yeah. But then you go through this. Up and down, it's hope, really. The thing that sustains you is hope. You hear people talk about it, that everything is horrible, but maybe it's going to get better.
Yeah.
So I'm on the plane, the stairs come up, and the engines start up, and I think, we're out of here. I'm gonna make it out of this thing. Then all of a sudden, the engines spin down, and you can see the light coming in from the stairs coming down, and I'm going, that's bad. But then these guys came on, but they took the guy in the seat right behind me, and which was a bad day for him.
Yeah,
but it was a great day for me. And then the stairs came up, and I remember going down the runway, looking out, and going, "I'm really getting out of here," and I did. And it was interesting because when I got back to Nairobi, I had flown into Nairobi commercial. I flew out of Nairobi on a chartered plane that I paid cash for, so there's no record of me leaving. So when I came back in, I had to go back through the airport, and I had nothing to show that I had left the country to go to Somalia, and they knew I came back from Somalia, so that was kind of complicated.
Oh, yeah. What do you even do? I mean, how do you handle that?
You make a phone call with a number in West Virginia.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I need a fake re-entry visa for Kenya.
I've had plenty of those, man. Plenty of those.
Yeah. Oh, look. Oh, it's in my other passport that I'm also not supposed to have.
Yeah. I'm not talking to you. Call this number.
That's right.
Yeah. We'll talk about bloodshed some other time.
My boss's boss said it's all good. I don't know how you know that guy, but here we are.
Yeah. Nobody knows anybody, by the way. Right?
Man, most of us panic when our phone battery hits 2%. Meanwhile, you got real decisions to make. I'm gonna scroll around in my notes because we're covering a lot of this organically.
Yeah, I don't know how to cover this. Okay, so let's go back to the question you asked. Yeah. Why did I write a book that skips around?
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and there's so much stuff we haven't talked about the writing I worked on as a speechwriter on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Wrote for the New York Times and GQ magazine, and I mean, there's just so many bizarre things. It's hard to figure out where to start.
It is. It's hard to make a through line.
There's no through line
because I mean, maybe if you look hard enough, there is. I don't know. I'm not
You're
a writer.
You're a smart guy, Jordan. You should, if you could figure it out. I mean, if anybody could, you could.
Thank you for that. If Hollywood made a movie about the HRT or just these kinds of teams in general, what's the first thing you would tell them to stop doing if you were consulting on that movie?
Hiring. Angelina Jolie.
Just stop hiring Angelina Jolie.
Stop hiring her. When American Sniper came out, look, she's probably the most. She's enormously talented.
Yeah.
And she's remarkable in every conceivable way. So it's not about Angelina Jolie. It's the idea that you could make a movie called American Sniper and take a book about a real guy who did real things, and all of a sudden in the middle of a gunfight, he's going to make a call home to talk to his kids and talk, I love you, whatever. There's not a lot of time to think about your kids when you're in a gunfight.
Yeah.
So many of the things that make those stories remarkable, those lives remarkable to moviegoers are not, they're not really, they don't resonate with the people making those movies. I mean, I've been in this town for a long time. You've been in this town for a long time. And there are things when you go into a studio and you talk about plots. So what I would say is, if you want to make one of these, make a story that resonates. And there have been some remarkable movies. I'm a big fan of Catherine Bigelow. I'm a big fan of Peter Berg. I'm a big fan of many people who embrace the inhospitable core of what these things are about. War is ugly.
Yeah.
Combat, violence in general is ugly. So don't aggrandize it, but by the same token, don't soft sell the reason you're making the movie.
Yeah.
So I was not a big fan of American Sniper.
Yeah, I can tell. What's the dumbest injury you ever saw somebody get during training?
The dumbest?
Yeah.
This is me, because oftentimes I'm an idiot, but we were doing this thing with asps. You know what an asp is? Like a baton.
Yeah, the extendable baton.
Like you're running, and I keep one so I tag dogs if. But anyways, you run this thing out. So we're practicing how to hit somebody with these things, and because we didn't do a lot of fighting, we had guns, right? So people go, "Well, you must have been some mixed martial arts," and I would say, "Yeah, at an H&K MP5,
right?
You know, you don't want to fight." So
by the time they're close enough to punch him.
Yeah, the team that I was on, we didn't fight. I mean, we won. We didn't. There was never. We were practicing one day, and we're practicing some kind of a fighting thing, and we had these asps, and we had these blocks of wood, and you would swing at this thing and we were doing the thing where you'd go up and you'd come down, and you go faster and harder, and it's a competition, everything you do. And I remember somebody was going harder than I was, and I went up and down. When I did, I came down on the top of the guy's hand that was holding the thing. So that was one of the stupidest.
Ouch.
Oh, it was bad. It was really bad. But listen, you get hurt. You know, people die all the time. So that was a stupid mistake, not the worst thing.
Yeah, if you're going to get injured in that line of work, you want to have a good story, not just, my training partner thought
it was just embarrassing, because then everybody laughs, and the poor guy's lost 2 fingers, and, it's just, it's unpleasant.
Yeah, so that's no good.
Curran, I'm sorry, man.
You ever hit anybody with one of those extendable batons?
I've hit people with about everything you can imagine.
Yeah. I've when I was working security, I wasn't carrying a gun. Technically, most of the time, some of the time, and I remember these Mexican gangsters. They would always get really drunk and start shit, and I would hit them with the baton.
Yeah,
and they would break all the time. These batons are. You think you're such an unstoppable badass with this metal stick, and then you hit somebody in the arm, and their arm might break, but your baton is bent, and you go, "Oh, this is only good for like one whack."
Well,
these things are
we had better quality ones than you did.
Yeah, apparently. I guess so.
Because I've never broken one, but I will say how you hit somebody makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
Because they're designed for specific things to change behaviors. They're not designed to. The less lethal force. Right?
Yeah.
Could they be used and kill somebody? Yes. That's not what they're designed for. But you've got to apply them in certain ways, and bone, joints, things like that.
Yeah.
Change people's opinion.
Yeah,
but then you had drugs and alcohol.
If you push on it. These guys were always coked up. Yeah, so we would try to choke them with it, because I couldn't often wrap my arms around the guys because they were big.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I'd choke them with a baton, or I would tap them on the top of the knee or the shin, because that hurts, but it doesn't have to do anything other than leave a bruise. But there was a guy who wouldn't let me go, and he was a little bit older, and I just couldn't get his arm off of me, so I whacked his arm, and I remember it broke. But then I remember looking at my baton like, oh shit, this thing is a piece of garbage. You're right though, the brand was not ASP, because those are expensive. It was a knockoff brand. Yeah. So I went out and bought an ASP after that. And you could tell, because the cheap ones, if you use them enough, they fall apart. They just fly apart.
Right.
Because they're made out of shitty
fake steel. If you're depending on something for your safety, your well-being, buy good stuff.
Yeah, generally a wise choice instead of going to the
good life decision.
Gas station baton or whatever I had. What's a survival skill everyone thinks they need but is actually useless?
Oh, wow. Survival skill that everybody thinks he needs.
I'll give you an example. While you're thinking, I'll give a funny example.
Give me one.
We were talking about earthquake survival and safety, and my wife is like, okay, I'm on it. I was like, you got to get us an earthquake survival safety kit or something like that. Can you research that? She was like, yeah. About a week later, I said, what'd you get? She goes, I got a fire starter. I'm like, what? What are you doing? We need like water and food and, I don't know, like a crank radio or something. She's like, all right, back to Amazon.
Well, I got a story for about everything, so I'll tell you the story.
Yeah.
So I lived in Venice for a long time, off and on for
Italy or California?
Well, I've been to Venice, but in California, Venice, California. So there's a restaurant on Abbot Kinney. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it was a very prominent restaurant at the time. And there's a garden in the back, and we'd have a lunch every Friday. So we'd get some really interesting people. We'd sit around and have lunch, and we'd tell stories and talk about interesting things, right? So these are very highly successful, well-known people this afternoon. And the topic was this. Like, if the earthquake comes, if it all goes to hell in Southern California, what are you going to do? So everybody thought about it for the week. They came back, and we had the conversation. So it starts with this one guy, and he said, I am going to take $10,000, and I'm going to have it broken into 5s and 10s. And everybody goes, what? And he goes, well, look, if there's a disaster, this is a true story, 100% true story. He goes, well, look, if nobody's going to be able to make change. So he went out and took 10 grand, and he did this. This was not a hypothetical, and had 20s and hundreds and whatever converted to 5s and 10s, because if the shit hit the fan, they wouldn't have to make change. That was his survival mechanism, right? The second guy said, I went out and I got a motorcycle license, and I bought an 80cc scooter because everybody's going to be trying to get out of LA.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get gas. I can go around them, and I can ride this scooter out of town.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's okay, but you'll get like 7 miles, and then you're out of gas, and you're hitchhiking, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't go very well. The third guy said, I went out and I bought a gas grill, a sleeping bag, and something else. I can't remember. All I remember is a sleeping bag. So they're all very happy with themselves. Everybody's going, right on. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Good decision making. You're going to survive. And they look at me, knowing my background, and they say, what would you do? And I would say, I didn't do anything, because I'm going to go to your house and I'm going to kill you and take your sleeping bag.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to your house. I'm going to kill you and take your motorcycle to your house and get your sleeping bag. And I'm going to go to your house and take your $10,000 and then go on my way.
Go on my way, yeah.
So the answer is, people oftentimes think, what do I need to survive these things? Many, many times they're wrong. So I think ultimately I want to reduce, like I knew people at various times. I'm not a gun nut. I have guns because I think I should in society. Mm-hmm. If something happens, I'd feel badly if I didn't.
Right.
For other people. And just because I've had so much training and experience with them. However, I have these friends who at various times would go out and buy 10,000 rounds of ammo or whatever. And they'd say, why aren't you buying ammo? And I'd say, because I don't want to carry 10,000 rounds of ammo. I need about 3 rounds so I can take yours. So people realize you need shelter if it's cold. You need food and water and sleep. And that's really it. You don't need much of anything except a plan. You need a plan. And if you have that,
or a helicopter,
you'll be fine. Helicopter's fine, but they run out of gas. They get shot down.
That's true. Yeah, I suppose. Oh man, getting shot down in a helicopter. How easy is it? You're the only guy I've talked to recently that might know this. How easy is it to shoot down a helicopter? Because one, you got to hit it. That can't be easy. And you got to hit it somewhere that matters, which is probably also not that easy.
Another great story. One of the guys on my team, because this team I was on, this hostage rescue team, it was some of the most extraordinary people you ever met. One of the guys' name was Jimmy Yacone. Jimmy Yacone was in one of the helicopters in Black Hawk Down. When you see, I think it was like Jeremy Piven, who I used to be friends with way back in the day. And Jeremy Piven was playing Jimmy Yacone, and I think it was Jeremy that was playing the role, got shot, or they took an RPG. They're flying around Mogadishu in a Black Hawk, and they take an RPG, it explodes. I think it killed the guy in the left seat. I think Jimmy was in the right seat, and it knocked him unconscious. I mean, a rocket-propelled grenade.
Yeah.
It's a big bang.
Yeah.
Right? So he wakes up they're augering in. He wakes up as the helicopter's going in, wakes up, pulls back, saves the day, survives. He ended up being on my sniper team. After he left the Army, he went to the FBI, to the hostage rescue team, and was on this thing. So I asked him that, because I've been in helicopter crashes too.
You have?
Yes,
oh, wow.
But not as a result of gunfire. And I asked him that. And as it turns out, it's pretty hard to shoot down a helicopter.
Yeah, you would think, yeah
because you got to hit something that you've got to hit a control mechanism of some kind.
Yeah,
right. You got to, like, a hydraulic line or whatever.
Tank or the pilot, I guess, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe not the fuel, but you know what? Speaking of these things, how you talk about these, Malcolm Gladwell, in one of his books, talked about in World War II, the government wanted to try and keep their planes from getting shot down. You know this? Did you read that?
Yeah, that's right. So
they said these planes were coming back, and none of them were shot in the engine. So they said, well, we're going to armor all these other things. And somebody said, well, they came back because they weren't shot in the engine. Right. So it depends on how you look at it. In reality, helicopters go down for a lot of different reasons, and they're remarkably resilient to gunfire. Vietnam's a perfect way to prove that. The old Hueys, and we had them. I flew in one for years and years and years. They're pretty durable. There's not a lot in them. I mean, there's a lot of metal and some open space, but I think they're not as easy to shoot down as you might expect.
What's it like going down in a helicopter then? Because I assume you're not dropping like a stone, or you wouldn't be here right now. So
no, it's the very first time when I remember I used to be terrified of flying. I grew up flying on private planes. Another story. And so I joined the FBI, and I got assigned to the Springfield, Missouri office, which had a military base called Fort Leonard Wood. And my job was to do certain FBI stuff on this base. I went up there one day, and we had to fly somewhere in a helicopter. And I get in this helicopter, and I'm thinking, I'm not all that excited about being in a helicopter. And it was a Vietnam era Huey. Just takes off. It was a bad day, and we're in this thing. And through no fault of anything, this was not war. This was nothing. The thing broke. And it gets a master caution light. There's a light at the top of the circular panel. And we had headphones on. And it was one of those things where somebody said, oh, shit, or whatever. And it was a master caution. And it lost the gearbox. I think that's what it was. And we auto-rotated. So I say crash landing. Nobody got hurt
really badly. What is
auto-rotated? It's a mechanism helicopters have that use the inertia of the blades. Sorry to helicopter pilots. We always say
I'm going to get 700 emails about this, but it's okay.
That guy's a moron.
Yeah, he doesn't even know. He made the whole thing up.
Yeah, right. Well, this one was widely reported because it was when you crash a helicopter in the Army, there's a report.
Yeah.
I was on it. And but anyways, I don't know the exact mechanism, but I do know there's an inertia thing. And it was a hard landing. Did the thing blow up and end up being in an Angelina Jolie movie? No. But it did. It was classified as a crash landing. So
it just feel like it's got to be like a car crash, but I don't know. It's horizontal, or sorry, it's vertical.
I didn't really know what was going on because the whole thing was new. It's like you in the taxi cab.
Yeah,
you're thinking, are we really going down?
Right.
And I'd never been in a helicopter before. I didn't even know what that meant. And but anyways, that was one of them.
So everybody survived then, yeah?
Yes, everybody survived.
The pilot must have been pretty happy about that. I don't know. That would be really scary.
Yeah, pilots are... I went for a glider ride a couple of weeks ago. I was in New Hampshire. I went to see my folks. And I go up for a glider ride, and I said something, about death or whatever, because I've had so many bad experiences flying. And the guy goes, we're not in the death business. Or we're not in the dying business. And that's pilots, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they dodge it every day, but it's physics.
So tell me about East Timor, because you start this security company, not contractor.
Yeah,
but you start the security company. But it sounds kind of like the Wild West meets mafia extortion racket meets like typical Africa, except it's not in Africa kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This place sounds like it's the Somalia of South Asia. I mean, it's just
that's
like
true. It's true.
It really sounds like that. Yeah.
So in 2006, I came back from Somalia, and I had this buddy at a bookstore on Abercrombie in Venice. Great place, a crazy clubhouse, really fun. And he said, you got to stop being a pussy. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you got to stop trying to get 14-year-old guys to kill you because you have some death fantasy because you like Hemingway, right? And I said, well, you got a good point there. And he said, so I said, I need a war that I could manage. So as it turned out, I had two things. One, I had some money that I had made contracting through intelligence agencies was, oddly enough, is hard to spend sometimes because of the nature of how those things pay out.
Okay.
And I had that. And then I had a friend who was an entrepreneur who was a member of another intelligence agency in another country. And we had a conversation in New York, and he had an idea, and it involved this country called East Timor. East Timor is half of an island that's north of Darwin, Australia, and east of Bali. And those are the only two places you could fly. You could fly to Darwin.
And what's the other half of the island? Sri Lanka or something?
West Timor.
West Timor? Oh, really? I've never heard of West Timor.
Yeah. I mean, it's this little tiny island. So they divided it in half, and they seceded from Indonesia. It was part of Indonesia.
Okay.
When East Timor said, we're out, Indonesia came in, and they killed a third of the population.
Oh.
I mean, massacred men, women, and children. Jeez. And I don't know the number. You'll have to Google it. But I think it's between 200,000 and 300,000 people.
Yuck.
It's a staggering number of people.
So West Timor's part of Indonesia then?
It still is, yeah.
Okay.
So as a matter of, so that's another story. So I said, all right, what's going on in East Timor? It's one of the most remarkable places on Earth because they have massive gas reserves, oil and natural gas, including literally pools of oil that look like ponds, but they're just oil bubbling out of the ground.
Sounds like some dinosaur shit.
It is dinosaur shit. Yeah. It's like the La Brea tar pits, but it's real, but it's like still active,
except
right?
you can put it in your lawnmower. Yeah,
that's right.
Crazy.
And they have natural gas, which is wild, but it bubbles out of the ground, or it comes out of the ground, and it will light on fire, and you'll see these hillsides that look like a giant barbecue grill.
That's really cool, though.
It's so cool.
As long as it doesn't kill anyone.
And I always said it's 5 of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life because they have they have red coral beaches. I mean, red coral.
Red sand, yeah.
No, red coral that takes over that. But they have black sand.
Oh, wow.
So
that's really cool.
Right. They have they had a mountain. I think it was a volcano. And they had Jumanji jungle. I mean, just the most beautiful primeval jungle with everything that you would find in those jungles.
What is it with any place that's that beautiful is always a complete shit dangerous,
right, because they're going to hack you up with a machete.
Right, like they can't just sit and enjoy the sand and the coral and the natural resources. No. They got to kill everybody.
Right,
over it.
And listen, I don't want to say anything bad about the Timorese because I have great respect for the leaders of the country and the Timorese. I had a wonderful time there within the parameters of my insanity, but I mean, getting killed with a gun is one thing. Getting killed with a rock or stoned to death or getting cut up with a machete is not that much more pleasant. Yeah. Exactly right. So anyway, I said, all right, what are we going to do? And they had this plan that was closely aligned with the fact that it was strategically important to major Five Eyes countries, including the United States.
So here's a question that's probably just above both of our pay grades potentially, but when that country secedes, Indonesia's like, you're not leaving. Why? Because of the resources or because it sets a bad precedent to let everybody who wants to leave?
I think so. I mean, I don't know how many UN studies, and I mean, this is very, very broadly written about, documentaries. Timor is a case study in how not to try and develop a country because they didn't last a whole lot. Well, actually they did, but when I went from Somalia, which was stood up as a country and fell down a very short period of time afterwards, I went to Timor, which at the time was the newest country in the world.
I remember reading about it was great fanfare that this was the newest country, and backpackers were like, I'm going to go check it out, the newest country. Yeah. And after hearing your stories, I'm like, did any of those backpackers ever come back?
Yeah, well... I knew a lot of those backpackers. Okay. I mean, technically, I was one of those backpackers. I mean, I flew to Timor with a suitcase. So, and a one-way ticket.
You maybe knew a little bit more about what you were getting into than the people from Lonely Planet?
Fair enough. Yeah, I did know a little bit more, and I did have a little bit more of a mechanism.
Yeah.
But it is a stunningly beautiful place. When the Indonesians killed a third of the population, they also razed the country. They took the phone lines, they blew up the roads, they burned the buildings, they killed anybody who wasn't either on their side or was too old or too young to care about. So it was decimated, and I mean decimated.
Terrible.
So into that vacuum came the United Nations. They stood up what they call a mission. So it would be the United Nations mission in Timor, UNMIT, and they restored some kind of livability and got the country back on its feet a little bit. When they pulled out, all of a sudden you had a civil war.
Sure.
Because everybody wants whatever shit's left over, right? So the military got in a big gunfight with the police, and it went downhill from there. So I went in during the Civil War, not during the secession from Indonesia.
Gotcha.
But when I went in, there were tanks in the streets. The Australians were there. They had an international defense force, which was Portuguese. It had started out as a Portuguese colony.
Oh, that was, okay,
and,
that makes sense.
Plus all the guys you see in the blue helmets from the United Nations, they were in there. So anywhere you go, there were tanks and helicopters and guys with machine guns walking up and down the dirt roads that were supposed to be streets. Jeez. It was wild. Absolutely wild. And there was no government per se, really.
Jeez. Why did I get confused and think it was Sri Lanka? Is there another... Did Sri Lanka have...
You might be talking about Myanmar. Myanmar was a big backpacker place until
I was thinking about it. For some reason, I had it pegged as Sri Lanka because with the Tamil Tigers were... Isn't that where the Tamil Tigers, the terrorist group, was?
I think they're partially there, but...
But that was another island. I just got the name. I don't know. I got confused because you're right. It's in Indonesia, so it's in Asia. I just didn't... I didn't clock that.
Yeah, Indonesia is a fascinating country because it's so big. It's the largest Muslim population in the world.
It is, and isn't it like 1,000 different islands, something like that, or hundreds and hundreds?
3,600.
Oh, so it's more than it's thousands.
It's thousands, and thousands of dialects. So Timor, for example, spoke Tetun, the local language, the local dialect. They spoke Indonesian because it was an Indonesian country. Basically, it was part of Indonesia. They spoke English because that's what the United Nations requires, and they spoke all the languages. Like if a United Nations country came in and they wanted to work in the house, they would learn that. So anytime you find these colonized, impoverished, marginalized countries around the world, whatever terminology, third world or developing nation, whatever terminology, and you actually live it, and you actually, I mean, I was there off and on for 7 years. And when you see how those things actually work, it's pretty it's pretty disillusioning about the world and charity. Anyway, that's another story. But I ended up there. I started this company, and I brought in a couple expats. I hired the prime minister's son, who was a remarkable guy in his own right, and I started building it was the third company that I'd started. So entrepreneurially, I looked at it as entrepreneurial, not like I just wanted to start an army of my own in a jungle. That's what it turned out to be, but that's not where I started. But anyway, they had no currency, so they used U.S. dollars. But the U.S. dollars came from China, pallet loaded on cargo planes.
Okay.
And my buddy, the backup guitar player in my band, was the president of ANZ Bank, and he would have $3 to $7 million at any given time on the telecounter because there was no credit, there was no checks, no credit cards.
Right.
Everything was cash.
Were
All
they
the
real
payrolls were
dollars?
cash. Real dollars.
Okay.
But they came from China.
Why?
So you could just wipe the ink off with your thumb. It was all counterfeit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So they weren't real dollars.
No, they weren't real dollars.
Yeah, okay.
But they operated. I mean, this was monopoly money in a country that had nothing.
So they just
no government.
It's like what was it, like Poland in during the Cold War? They would use like Kent cigarettes, and so you'd be passing this pack of cigarettes that was unsmokably destroyed, but it was like, nah, it's still a pack. It still counts because it was just currency. It didn't matter what it looked like.
Well, people talk about money and cash. We don't use cash anymore. You go to Starbucks, they look at you. You're nuts if you try to give them a $5.
There are places around where I live up in NorCal, and it says cash free. If you show up with cash, you're washing dishes.
Yeah, luck. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. That was all cash. I mean, there was nothing. So when I built that company, with no safety net at all. And as it grew bigger and bigger and bigger, you needed a safety net because if billing doesn't match up with receipts at the end of the month, you got all the guys that you hire as henchmen to burn everybody else down. They're coming after you.
Yeah,
me,
sure.
Right? So they'd line up 4,000 people all over the country, and they'd show up to get paid in cash. So we'd go to the bank, and get $2.5 million in 20s on a Friday morning, and then you line up, and we'd have our own guys, like the inner guys, who would be ready to go after the other guys if anything could happen.
Yeah, because it seems like an invitation to get robbed. But then again, you are robbing the security company for the whole country, so maybe no one's going to steal.
Yeah, but they are at war too.
There's
right?
also anything can happen.
It was a difficult. It was not easy starting that company, but somehow it worked. Really extraordinary people.
Yeah,
and the Timorese, by and large, are remarkable people in their own way. I mean, just the culture of the island itself. Mm-hmm. Now, remember, they started out as a Portuguese colony in the 16th century.
I didn't know that. Okay.
17th century. So they were Catholic, but they were also animist. So they would go to church on Sundays in these big cathedrals that had been built in the 1800s. And then they would go out, or I would go out with them, and we'd go to these cemeteries that were all totems. You got like water buffalo skulls, and we'd have cast spells.
That's cool.
And it was wild because I don't know how, somehow they, being the people in the company and the people that I interacted with, thought that I had black magic that was stronger than everybody else's.
They thought you had black magic?
Me personally.
What gave them that idea?
I have no idea.
Just you're like a tall white guy, so they're like, he must be magical.
I don't know what happened, but I can tell you that's why I survived and that's why I thrived there.
Really?
I don't know why, but I can tell you endless stories about what that means, chicken sacrifices and all the different stuff, exercising. There was the ghost in the well, that story that I wrote about.
So they would call you and be like, "Hey, man, I got evil spirits."
Well, I had this guy named Johnny, and Johnny is like JAUGHNNYIE, like it was phonetic of whatever his tattooed name was, right? But Johnny was a stud. Johnny was the greatest. He was one of the senior local executives in the company, and he came up one day and he said, "Boss, I need Thursday off." And I said, "Okay, cool. What's going on?"
Yeah.
And he said, "My aunt died." And I go, "Johnny, didn't your sister die yesterday and somebody else died the day before? What's going on with your family?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I've got a really good job. My uncle's really jealous, so he's cast all these spells on my family to kill them." And he goes, "I really need your help." And he wanted me to come over on his day off to put together some spells that were stronger than his uncle's. So you don't anticipate those types of tasking requests as CEO of a company.
No.
But that's Tuesday.
But it's also better than him telling you to come over so you can go kill his uncle, right? It's
there's plenty of that too.
There's plenty of that too?
There's plenty of that
okay.
too.
Because that's kind of where I saw the story going.
Yeah,
and then it just made a hard right into,
you never know what you're getting. I mean,
nuts.
the violence that you're exposed to day day is awful.
It sounds like a life is cheap kind of country. Is that accurate?
That's a really great question. I don't know that because the people the team Marines that I knew and worked with and I had enormous respect for, they were beautiful in a lot of ways, but something would snap. Like I had this guy one time, he was a guard outside of, there's not a supermarket, but it was like a place where you'd buy expired canned goods from China.
Okay.
Right? That's how you'd survive, right?
Yeah.
And bald eagle, that was a delicacy too.
Actual bald eagle?
Yeah, but that's another story.
You should start a podcast that's called "That's Another Story."
Yeah, it's another story.
And if you're playing the drinking game at home where you drink every time he says "That's another story," I am not paying for your hospital bills.
We only have so much time, and we're probably already running out of this time.
We got another hour, man.
Okay, all right.
Don't worry.
Well, just we'll play a game where you go, tell me one of those other stories.
Sure.
This story is important because the weapons, when the Indonesians started the war and when it went from there, most of the weapons were taken out of the general population. So you'd have some in the army, some in the police. Most of them were taken out of society. So you would have bows and arrows, poison darts, machetes, which were most often handmade. It was like being in prison, right? Everything was manufactured.
I'd rather get shot, I think.
Yeah.
If I had to choose between poison, bow and arrow, and shot, I'm choosing shot every time.
I think you're a smart guy, Jordan. you got a lot going on. But anyway, so this guy's guarding a supermarket.
Yeah.
Let me back up. You needed a private security company to guard whatever you had as a Westerner. If you wanted to go and live there and work there, you had to hire my company or my competitor, because if not, they would burn you out, take your women and kill your whatever else. It was that bad. And
just Civil War situation where everybody's dying.
Well, the Civil War didn't last that long. It wasn't really the Civil War. It was that when you take that much from a culture, it creates a vacuum. In that vacuum, you pour in human nature, and human nature says, I want what's left, right? So you have a complete lack of order in ways that we take it for granted. So people are going to say, well, I like his refrigerator. Maybe I could take his refrigerator. I'm going to go find out. And you go take his refrigerator, and then it goes downhill fast from there. So there was a lot of that. It wasn't necessarily the Civil War. It was everything that came around. They had this guerrilla leader named Renato, who was going to come in and take over the government. Actually tried. We had a coup d'état.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he came down with his rebels out of the mountains. I mean, literally, like watching a Banana Republic movie. Literally came down out of the jungles, attacked the president's house, and attacked the prime minister's house. They shot the president, Ramos Horta, who won. He was a Nobel Prize winner. They shot him, I think, 7 times, and he survived.
Oh, he survived?
He survived. Wow. No, the guy's a stud.
That's why you choose getting shot instead of the machete.
Okay.
You're going to survive the machete.
That's right, because now we're going to talk about the machete.
That's right.
So I've got this team, this like an inner circle of guys. So somebody calls up and says, hey, Jimmy Joe just chopped off somebody's head at the supermarket, which is, it's like a cave with some dead stuff out front that you could buy to eat. So we go over there, and I go up, and there's this guy sitting on a bucket turned over. And I go up to him, and there's a guy with his head chopped off. And I go, dude, what's going on? You're supposed to protect him. Why'd you chop his head off? And he just looks up at me, and he looks back down at his feet. So things would happen that you would try to intellectualize. There's no intellectualizing some behaviors.
Yeah.
It's just, he didn't know why I did it. Just chopped the guy's head off.
Jeez.
It's just, so anyways, you learn a lot about human nature traveling in different cultures, and I've been in a lot of different cultures.
Yeah, it seems like a strange, it would be exhausting to live that way.
It was exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when you leave, you don't miss it, I assume. I mean, maybe
I always missed it.
You missed it?
Bad.
Like, what do you miss? I feel like the hypervigilance would get old fast.
Because every day, every moment of every day was every single possible thing you could expect out of life. It was so intense, always. It was like a 24-hour, 7-year gunfight. And, I mean, sometimes it was, those things. But I think that some people get to a point, and you probably find this with professional athletes. You've interviewed everybody, remarkable people, extraordinary people. And I think many of those people probably told you, you're the perfect example. You're not there yet, but you're going to be there someday. When you look back and you're going to miss the VIG, you're going to look back and you're going to miss the action, whatever it is. And so many professional athletes hang on as long as they can because when it's over, it's over. And you get used to it and you accept that you've moved on to something else in life. And that sucks. That sucks. So my life has been a scale down of those things, going from combat to whatever to business, because business can get that too. When you got to make a payroll every month.
In fake dollars.
Yeah, in fake dollars. But it doesn't matter what it is. When you live a life intensely and you realize it's starting to become less intense, many people don't like that. I didn't like it.
I could see that. I could see that. I mean, it could just be my midlife crisis talking, but I feel like I could taste a little bit of that. By the way, where do you buy millions of dollars in counterfeit U.S. money from China asking for a friend? How do you find something like that?
China will find you.
Okay.
People don't understand. People talk about Russia. People talk about, and we can talk about this too, about the intelligence community. Yeah. We got a lot of things, how I got to these places is probably the most interesting
Let's
thing.
do it.
Like, okay. But what people don't realize, in my opinion, like I've worked with many of the primary intelligence agencies. I've worked all the Five Eyes, the Five Eyes of the ally intelligence agencies.
U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia, New Zealand.
Yes, exactly right.
Am I missing one?
No, that's it. But then you have then you have Mossad, or let me say you have the Israelis, and you have Mossad, Shin Bet, all those organizations. But then we have favored nation status with some countries and work well with them, like the French and the Italians sometimes. But I was working like with Mozambique and South Africa.
Sure.
And I've spent a great deal of time in Africa. And some of these organizations have a whole different set of rules, and your interaction with them creates a lot of problems for the Five Eyes countries that you're working with. It becomes very, very complex. Very complex.
What sort of rules conflict with the?
Like you can go to jail for being, for talking improperly to a foreign intelligence agency. I see. Let's come back to that because I want to talk about classifications and how you get in that world to begin with.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Actually, we haven't even talked about that world yet, but just to go back really quickly to the Chinese. Here's the thing that I learned about the Chinese that I think people need to know. When I went to Timor, I was the largest employer in the country, and I was an American. And I went to the United States Embassy in Timor in 7 years. I went there one time. It was 4th of July, and it was a pool party, and I talked to nobody, right? The United States, the USAID, which has been very political, it was disbanded basically by Trump.
Right.
So many people wouldn't have known about USAID unless that had happened. But USAID is very big in certain countries, and they were very big in Timor. But here's the difference, and here's where we're going with this story. The United States government in East Timor, which had all this gas and oil, and which Australia and all these other countries were intimately involved, I'll back up. The Chinese came in, and their model would be, the Chinese would come in and they would go to the government and they would say, we're going to give you, literally did, this is not hypothetical, they brought in 12 BMW SUVs on a boat. They gave them to the 12 ministers in charge of the departments that they wanted to influence. Then they say, we're going to build you a new government building that's going to cost $2.5 million. They brought in the concrete. They brought in the architects. They brought in the laborers. They brought in all the materials, and all the money went back. On paper, they gave Timor $2.5 million.
Yeah.
2.45 went back to China.
Sure.
But they leave the laborers behind. You go anywhere in Central America, South America, Africa, many developing nations, you're going to see the same model. So they have been brilliant in colonizing the world with a business model where they bring in foreign aid, but they leave people behind to integrate within the culture.
The Chinese have been doing that for thousands of years.
Yeah, and it's genius. It's brilliant. So the Chinese came in and did this, and they had, a buddy of mine ran Manitoba Hydroelectric. Literally, Timor was powered by a bunch of diesel generators in Connex boxes. You never had power. Living there was really rough.
Yeah, I bet.
But the government finally had enough money held in what they called a Stockholm Trust, because they weren't allowed to spend the money. The UN would appropriate a portion money. So the government came out and went to tender with a new power grid system for the entire country. And I don't remember, so I'm going to get it wrong. But I know it was more than $1 billion. It might have been 1.5, 1.6. That I know this because my buddy ran the power company, or ran the power grid, right? Mm-hmm. The government opened the contract at like 11 o'clock at night, another exaggeration. They opened it for a very, very brief time period, like midnight to 8 in the morning. They had one bid, and it was the Chinese company that had put the whole thing together. They got the contract, and they did very, very poorly on the job, but all the money went back. So the Chinese come in with $2.5 million for a government building and 12 BMW SUVs.
And they leave with $1 billion.
And they leave with $1 billion. And they leave their people behind to integrate with the culture, and you now have an infrastructure that gives you any information that you want. And that's what they've done around the world, including the United States of America. That's their model. Mm-hmm. The United States model at the time, and I mean, this is not an exaggeration, this is specifically, the United States came in with $12,500 to buy T-shirts that said, support Timor, buy local. Okay. There were these ugly brown T-shirts with gold lettering, and that was the contribution the United States government made to one of the potentially primary important sites near the nuclear highway and with this oil and natural gas. Yeah. And you take those two models together, and you realize how we've been asleep at the wheel for quite some time. Yeah. It's over. I mean, that's a very small metaphor that I would use to explain where we are in the world right now.
Yeah.
Russia doesn't do that. Iran doesn't do that. North Korea doesn't do that. China has done it. And that's another conversation perhaps, but I've seen these things living in those environments, how they work on a day-to-day basis.
I was in Laos about this time last year, and not in the touristy areas generally, just kind of driving around, farting around in the country, hiking, stuff like that. And you see this big dam, and you're like, wow, that's out of place and looks really new. And there's Chinese writing on it. And you go, this is a really nice highway. This looks pretty new. Yeah, it's brand new. It's built by the Chinese. All right, we're going to take the train. And I'm like, oh, nice. What's a Laotian train going to look like? Am I right, guys? Let's hope the thing stays on the tracks. And you go, and it's a brand new station. There's a Chinese police officer in the corner. All the writing is in Chinese. There's a video playing in Chinese. They're selling Chinese snacks at the train station. And a bullet train arrives. And I'm like, what country am I in?
Yeah.
Because I thought I was in Laos. I just got out of the jungle swatting away bugs that probably have some kind of venom that rots your skin away. And I'm getting on a bullet train with air conditioning where even the writing and all the parts are in Chinese and the bathroom signs are in Chinese. They didn't even bother making it readable to the local population. They were just like, nah.
To all the Chinese people, all the Chinese nationals, not Chinese people, to all the Chinese nationals watching this podcast right now, you're the best.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I speak Mandarin, and part of it is just because, look.
They're so smart.
I need to be able to talk to the rest of the world.
And they're so committed. They're smart, they're committed. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's right. But I'm saying the gig is over.
Yeah,
it's up. It's over.
Yeah, to catch up, we would need to actually give a shit, and that's not possible at this point. I don't think.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not. It's unlikely. Anyway, I don't know how. I don't even know how we could try to catch up at this point. We'd have to it's like an insurmountable task.
That's true.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a patriot.
Well,
I've lived and died for my country. You are, right?
Haven't died.
I make these statements out of the reality of the life that I've lived in those worlds. I'm not saying I want it to be the case. I'm not saying I have an answer of how it happened or where we go from here. I'm just saying people need to realize when you're watching all these stories about what's happening in the world right now, you may be looking in the wrong direction. The Chinese are really committed.
The only way that I can see us getting ahead is either AI or quantum supremacy that allows us to just have a crazy edge, which is they're investing in that as much or more than we are, or there's some economic bubble or something that bursts in China that just sets them back 20 years and gives us a chance to seize that advantage. And then we actually have, but the problem is we have to then seize that advantage instead of just going, oh, look at that guy tripped over his own shoes and then continuing to pick our nose and watch television. Which is, anyway, like you said, another conversation. Can we talk about Waco and Ruby Ridge and the FBI?
I'll talk about it only because you're a great guy and because People are going to ask, right?
People are going to ask, yeah.
But I'll say it this: there's no way to sugarcoat this. Waco, people know what Waco is. Some people know what Ruby Ridge is.
I don't know if people know what Waco. I mean, we're old. You got to realize.
Well, only because it's become a folk thing. It's become like the Kennedy assassination, and because
that's true.
A friend of mine named Tiller Russell, who's a brilliant movie director, did a big Netflix show called Waco: American Apocalypse. It popularized it. If it wasn't popularized enough, and he brought 4 people in to talk about it. An FBI hostage rescue team sniper, which is me, a negotiator who tried to talk the thing out, which is a guy named Gary Nesner.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy that ran it, and then a Branch Davidian. And he talked to Dick DeGuerin a little bit, who was an attorney that came in for David Koresh. Bottom line, it was a shootout with the ATF. The government had a lot of people died, both sides. The government didn't really have any backstop to take over once the firefight ended, and it was war, and that was us. We were the final backstop, the hostage rescue team. We flew in. 51 days later, the building burned down, and 80-something people died. Mm-hmm. And when it happened, now this is 30 years ago. And
I remember watching it on
32
TV.
years ago. Yeah. Well, you must have been really young, but it was 32 years ago. Many people that would watch
7
don't even know what we're talking about. However, it's become a very, very big controversy because people have very strong things to say about the government, about the FBI, about how these things happen. I was involved in it. So people ask. It was not an issue in my life for 30 years because I've lived such a broad life. It was a very, very small event. It was a tragic event where 80-something people died. I'm not belittling the impact, but I'm saying imagine what happened to your life. Well, not 30 years ago, but like 2/3 of your life.
Got my learner's permit.
2/3 of life ago, something happens.
Yeah.
And it did. So people always ask me about it. I respect that. And I'll answer specific questions that you have about it.
I think most people forgot what it was. And I'm going off memory here, but wasn't it? So David Koresh started a cult. They built a compound in Waco, Texas. And then they decided we're going to buy a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And stockpile weapons and ammunition. ATF got wind of it and said, you probably don't need this unless you're going to be up to something. And then I assume there's licenses required for the amount of weapons and ammo they had. They were kind of preparing for an apocalyptic situation, right?
Yeah, but just really quickly, you hit all the major points. A guy named Vernon Howell changed his name to David Koresh because it was prophetic, and he became the second coming of Christ. This isn't me. This is widely written about.
Right.
He said it in his own words. You can watch it on YouTube 1,000 times, right? When he did that, he built this compound. People came to stay there to worship with him. He took all their stuff, took their women, none of which anybody really cares about. It's, people do in America.
Yeah.
However, what happened was there's no license to buy a bunch of guns or to buy a bunch of ammo, but if you put fully automatic trigger sears, converting a regular gun to fully automatic, you do need a license for that. He didn't have those.
Okay.
And he was buying hand grenade husks and building hand grenades. He was putting the components back together to build hand grenades.
Okay.
So at the time, there's always some kind of terrorism. There's always some topic du jour that people are worried about. At the time, it was a Christian national white supremacy domestic terrorism thing wrapped around this thing called the Turner Diaries, which was the government's coming to get you, and Zog was the Zionist occupational government. It was a big thing at that time, and agencies looking for something to do sought out people where they could. It was like a scene with a crime with a scene waiting to happen. Right?
Okay.
And so ATF went in with a search warrant to look for those guns and to look for those grenades. The people in the compound, led by David Koresh, said no, and they had a hellacious gunfight. So that's what it was. I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I'm not saying they couldn't have picked them up in town. All of these things are widely debated. Mm-hmm. People are going to yell at me and say whatever, call me all these names. And, it is what it is.
Nice.
But the reality is this went on for 51 days. At the 51st day, Janet Reno, the Attorney General of the United States, said, enough is enough. We inserted tear gas into the building with tanks because they were shooting the shit out of us.
I remember watching a video of this tank without a cannon. It had like a wall pusher in or whatever you call it.
Had a boom on it. Yeah. It looked like a gun.
Yeah. But it looked
bad,
square, right? And boom, and it knocks a wall in.
And it shoots tear gas, and we were shooting tear gas in it. But they were hosing us, man. I mean, they shot, the Branch Davidians inside that compound shot so many bullets, so many rounds, they had to weigh them. They picked them up with a front-end loader, and they had to weigh them. He had millions of rounds of ammo, and they shot a lot of them at us.
Wow.
I mean, there's no reason to talk about this thing. I've talked about it. You can read books about it, documentaries. The first book I wrote, Cold Zero, I wrote about it at the time. So there's not a lot to say, except that I now have come to terms with the fact that it's an American story.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a bad one. It's a very bad one.
Do you ever do you feel like you carry moral weight when this mission, like a mission like that becomes so tragic and shitty?
Why? No.
Not like it's your fault, but I just mean like you were like, oh man, maybe I wish I wasn't part of that or anything along those lines.
Nobody wants to be part of something like that. I mean, you join the military and you storm the beaches of wherever and you save the world for democracy. That's what you want.
Yeah, yeah.
You ask military law enforcement people writ large over the last 200 years, you ask them how many actually got that? Not many.
Right. No,
you sign up waving the flag saying, send me. You get a politician involved, and it doesn't go well.
Right.
We just came off the longest 2 wars in American history, Iraq and Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And you look at the countless heroes that said, I'll go after 9/11. And you look at what came back. War is always bad. Mm-hmm. In my experience, and I've been in a shitload of it, it's always bad.
Yeah, I wonder what sort of psychological toll that stuff takes on you emotionally, even like spiritually. I know you think about that more now than you used to.
Well, I went down hard, man. I think I've done well in my life now. I'm happy and I have a good life. That was not the case for a long time.
You were drinking a lot, as evident. I mean, the book mentions alcohol several times.
Yeah.
Most people who drink moderately don't have that many alcohol references in one publication.
Well, that's probably true, but I think many people that live life experiences wouldn't write as intimately as I did. I mean,
probably not.
I mean, you read that thing.
Yeah.
How many people have you ever known that said, I did this and I did that? That book didn't do me any good in terms of being a paradigm of virtue in the world, right?
No.
But the reason I wrote that book was because I feel that the people that do take my path, and there aren't many, and that have the ability to write it down, need to do that because somebody's got to tell that story. Mm-hmm. Not everybody wants to admit that story exists. They can take aim at me for a lot of different things, but it's the truth about that world in a way that I felt like I could write down that would make sense to people, good, bad, or otherwise.
Whenever I look at the questions that I write after the conversation or during the conversation, it's kind of like they just don't appeal as much anymore. You probably had that writing the book. Like you write a chapter and you go, nah, I'm not really interested.
Yeah, because the fascinating thing about that book, I should have a little bit of context, right? I wanted to be a writer, so I came to California. I wrote for Orange Coast Magazine, trying to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. Lived in Orange County, didn't go well. I went back and was an English teacher at a boarding school. Then I went and worked for a newspaper. Then I got hired to be a speechwriter in D.C. Then I ended up in the FBI. So there's that media side, the government side. Then on 9/11, my first book came out September 12th, 2001. So I had already resigned from the FBI, and to go into writing, I said, well, I've done all I can in the FBI. I'm going to go after this now. NBC hired me, so I went to work for NBC. So I was on air. I was that talking head talking about all this stuff. So I was on the Today Show and Nightly News, Meet the Press. I was on Meet the Press.
And you started September 12th, basically?
September 12th, man.
Wow. 2001.
2001. My first book signing was September 12th, 2001 at a Borders in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. So September 11th,
wow.
I was supposed to go to New York for a book signing on the next morning. And I was in my FBI office when the towers went down. And I'd already been scheduled because it was a big press tour and the PR tour. My first show was Larry King Live. Do you remember Larry King?
Sure, yeah, I used to know Larry. He used to sit right there.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was the first show I ever did. And then it went from Larry to all the other shows in NBC, and ended up getting a show on NBC with Martha McCallum, who went to Fox, a Daily Show.
Yeah.
And so I worked in TV for 5 years. GQ excerpted my first book, and I had the inside cover of GQ magazine, which was wide ridicule, hatred from guys I worked with. It was just
because it just
horrible,
too fluffy.
It was absurd.
Too soft.
It was absurd. I went from this world, and I'm on GQ magazine on the inside cover. GQ magazine. It was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so stupid. It was so idiotic. But they excerpted the book, and they put me on the masthead, so I wrote for them. And then the New York Times hired me to write op-eds. So I was writing for the New York Times, GQ, and I was on NBC. But I went out to Langley and set up a thing where I could work using those covers for elements within the intelligence community. That's how I got into the intelligence side of things.
I see. So basically, you were a journalist, and then you were like, "Hey, I could use this to be a spy and a journalist."
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I didn't necessarily do spy stuff.
Yeah,
I worked with spies, but I had specific skills that worked in those environments in support of spies.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It does. There was one part in the book you said you were selling technology to intelligence organizations or something like that.
Yeah, that's another element of it. That was much later because. When I grew up with this guy named Harold Janine, who was one of the world's first multinationalists. And this is also widely written about, because I know you get the bullshit factor, like, shut this guy up, he's just full of shit. But it's all documented. When Random House bought this book, they made me prove everything, photographs.
Really? I'm surprised that publisher gave a shit, honestly. Because I read stuff and I go, there's no way any of this is true. And the publisher's like,
that's what they said.
We don't really care.
Yeah, no, they cared. They cared. So they wanted to see the plane ticket from Somalia. They wanted contracts with the United Nations.
Which publisher?
Random House.
Oh, yes. Props to them for giving a shit. I swear, a lot of the books I read, I'll call Penguin and go, guys. Come on. Ask anybody who's ever worked in this industry, and they will. Let me introduce you to somebody who will tell you that this isn't even possible.
I got to give a shout out to the legal department at Random House because I've done 2 books with them. I did this book, and I've got another one, a true crime book that's coming out shortly. Both with them. And they're the best. I mean, I think the world of those guys. They're remarkable. My previous publisher was Time Warner. They were fantastic. And now I'm at HarperCollins. They're good. But anyway, they verified absolutely everything for these reasons.
That's great.
But going back to the intelligence side of things, my Uncle Harold he started ITT, which is now community colleges or something like that, but in the day was the world's first multinational corporation. He was a Time Magazine Man of the Year. He was the highest paid executive for a decade. He's a remarkable guy. But he was a private money financier for the CIA. He would use his money or the company's money to finance CIA operations, one of which was in Chile, and this is widely written about as well. He paid cash money to overthrow the government of Salvador Allende in Chile in 1970 or 71, something like that.
What's in it for him to use his own money to do that?
Because it was called ITT was International Telephone and Telegraph.
Okay.
They used copper for the wires. A lot of the copper was produced in Chile. They had a general strike. Chile nationalized the companies, and they put ITT out of business to a certain extent. So the company of ITT had an interest in getting copper from Chile. The U.S. government had a vested interest in keeping communications. So the government needed phones and telegraphs and everything else, which were produced by ITT. So there was an interface, and there is to this day. People don't realize that almost the vast majority of what the U.S. government buys and uses is produced by private corporations.
Sure.
Electric Boat, General Dynamics, Raytheon, et cetera, et cetera. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, I believe that's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is.
And I've done a lot of stuff with them. A lot of stuff, like an invisible suit. We made this invisible sniper suit using light fiber optic, and
that's awesome.
Oh, they do crazy stuff.
Does it work?
It worked pretty well, but I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know where it is right now.
Yeah,
they do crazy stuff.
You can't see it.
That was kind of a
could be a guy
generic
sitting in the corner wearing
like
one right now.
Like a Monsanto ghillie suit, right?
Yeah,
it's just going on.
You step on the carpet and you're like, "What the hell? There's a person under here." I mean, it seems possible.
It was kind of like that thing in Predator. You know, when Predator's got the cloaking thing.
Yeah,
it was very much like that. It had sensors that would read what's around you, and it would feed it to the fiber optics.
Yeah.
It was actually very, very good.
It just projects what's behind it to the front.
Here's another thing. I remember I had this project one time, and if you shoot from a helicopter at something, it's hard because the helicopter's moving. If you're shooting at a boat, the boat's moving, the helicopter and the boat's moving, the odds of hitting something are small.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Right? So a buddy of mine in Hollywood, a movie director, was whatever. I called him up and I said, "How do you stabilize the cameras?"
Yeah, that's a good idea.
In a helicopter, and he said, "Go see this guy in the valley." So I fly from Quantico, Virginia, out to L.A., go over the 405, and I end up in this guy's place. It's the same guy that invented the jetpack. The guy flying around in the jetpack.
Oh, the water one?
I don't know if it was water. I think it was air. The first ones
really?
were air. It became, now it's like you go to Cancun and you drink 2 margaritas and go for a ride.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But anyway, he was a fascinating guy. So we pioneered a sniper platform based on what was the Steadicam concept, which generates artificial mass with inertia. It spins a wheel and it stabilizes.
Wow.
Anyway, the point of the story is that going back to all these organizations, that many of them are private. They produce money, and the interface between the application from the federal government and the private industry behind them, that interface is massive, massive, massive money. And that's what I wanted a piece of.
That makes sense. So basically, this guy was who's the guy that paid to overthrow the government of Chile?
His name was Harold Janine.
Okay.
Google him. Harold Janine. It's widely written about. But anyway, they killed, I think it was Salvador they killed, but they being the Chilean government, sent a hit team after him. And they blew up their offices building in New York. And he went to hide out in an estate that he had in northern New Hampshire.
Jeez.
So I grew up, he hired a guy named Jack McCone, who I called Jack. It was John A. McCone, I think. But he was the acting director of the CIA. And Harold Janine hired him to come to work and made him a board member at ITT. So I grew up with these guys, spies and the money behind them, just hanging out in this house in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting interface as my life moved forward because I had that perspective in youth.
Yeah, so he pays to, I'm still wrapping my head around this. So he pays to overthrow the government of Chile, and in return he gets access to copper, and the CIA gets to overthrow the government of Chile.
Yeah, but the CIA per se did not have an interest in overthrowing the government of Chile.
Okay.
The U.S. government had a strategic national security interest in having communications. At the time, in order to have communications, you needed to have wires. In order to have wires, you needed copper. And where do you get the copper? You get it in Chile.
So they needed to make that friendly enough to buy the copper, basically.
Well, they shut the copper off. They nationalized the interest.
I just mean they wanted to undo that.
The government?
Yeah.
Yes, right. So who's the mechanism for the federal government at that time?
Right.
The CIA. You're not going to send the Postal Service after them.
Right.
You're not going to send the Marshal Service after them. So the CIA put it together. But the money in these things, Jordan, we can't talk about this in one conversation. But the money is fascinating.
So the dumb question is, why doesn't the CIA just pay to have the government overthrown? Why do they need Harold's money?
Because the way you spend it. Remember, here's a perfect example. Remember the Oliver North thing with the birthday cake and the Sandinistas?
I was just going to bring that up because I had Oliver North on the show and I asked him about this and he gave me the most ridiculously upside down answer ever.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not even. Yeah. So.
Look, he's not going to say it, but I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you. Not that anybody cares, because this is ancient history. Does it still go on? Of course it does. Of course it still goes on. I mean, ask anybody. Ask a private first class who was in Incirlik Air Force Base or whatever, the joint base, about pallets of $100 bills flying into Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years. The world operates in cash. We buy stuff. It's so much easier to pay money for something than it is to blow it up, right? Sometimes you got to do both. But the world... My exposure to how the world of money interface with the government world of intelligence operations was the most fascinating thing I've done in my life, and finding out how to work in that world and how complex that world is. And on a very really pedestrian level, you could see it in Timor because the money was coming in from China, and it was, a UN guy from Africa would take his money back to Africa. He'd take all those fake dollars back to Africa. But my Uncle Harold growing up was bigger money with bigger operations. And today, the money and the bigger operations are astronomically, exponentially larger. But that's fascinating. If we could you and I just have a conversation sometime about private money and the government intelligence agency intelligence community around the world. In my life, that's the most fascinating thing I've ever been involved with.
Yeah, look, give me another example of this, because is there another sort of common example that everybody knows
I'll give you an example that I'll try not to get in trouble with, but I helped build a company that had a technology, and it was a very cool technology, and it appealed to intelligence agencies.
Okay.
Right.
So vague.
But
Continue.
I don't want to be because I love the guys.
Yeah.
The company still exists to a certain extent.
Okay.
And I don't want to step on a bunch of cranks, but I'll just talk conceptually about how it goes. Let's
Okay.
say you come up with a phone, and this phone could give me anything. What could that phone? It could count to 10.
Okay.
So you find all the intelligence agencies in the world that want to count to 10, and you label them. And because of my connections, I could get a hold of them. So I would go to Mozambique. I would go to Israel. I would go to Lebanon. I would go, well, maybe not Lebanon, because there are exclusion lists. There are countries that you can't talk to.
Yeah, Iran or whatever.
Yeah. I never talked to Iran. But did I talk to elements within Iraq? Yes. Did I talk to countries that did not necessarily have great relationships with Israel? Yes. Because they all want it. And it's business. That's the way business works. I mean, if you think that Raytheon is not selling missiles to other places, you're out of your mind, right? I mean, that's the way it is. It has to be approved on some levels. Anyways, I've got some crazy arms deal stories for you.
Yeah.
Crazy.
We got time.
So anyways, so so I have this watch, and a watch can count to 10. What people don't know about the watch that can count to 10 that I'm going to sell to you, let's say pick a country. You're the intelligence agency for Turkey. Mm-hmm. Let's go to Turkey because it's true, okay? Erdogan is a dude. I mean, Erdogan, I'm not going to say anything bad about Erdogan, the president of Turkey.
President dictator of Turkey.
Yeah. No, I got nothing bad to say about Erdogan, okay?
Okay.
Sir, nothing bad to say about Erdogan. However, we had this I'll tell you an actual story, okay? And it's kind of a funny story,
Sure.
but this is the way it works. So I was a former FBI agent who had worked for intelligence community, including the CIA. And it was fairly widely known because I'd talked about it on CNN or CNBC and NBC. And I did it for about 5 years, so it's not like I was a secret. I'm not saying I was famous, but I was not a secret, right? So I end up in this office in Ankara. I didn't end up there. I went there all the time. I was in Ankara all the time. And
in Turkey.
Ankara, Turkey. I'm sorry. Yes, Ankara, Turkey looks just like Santa Monica. It's
really,
it's nice. It looks like Santa Monica, and the houses and stuff like that. So I end up in this office with this guy, who is a retired military officer. I'm not going to say his rank because I don't want to get him in trouble, because you can get in real trouble dealing with these guys. And so we're in this place. It's on the second floor of a beach house in Santa Monica, right? So I'm sitting there with a buddy of mine who was a crazy out there guy. He's a full-on arms merchant who's dead now, so we can talk about him.
Okay.
But he was very high up in the Republican Party of the United States government. Very, very high up. He was married to a woman who was a name, okay? So we're on a couch, and this military officer who's retired, who's putting the whole thing together, is over here. French doors that open. It's a nice sunny day. Santa Monica. These two guys come in, and this one guy looks like something straight out of a Van Damme movie, right?
Okay.
Or like Chuck Norris movie, right? He's got the chest hair. He's got a cheap suit. He's got gold chains. He's got like food
Turkish odd job, basically.
He's got baklava crumbs in his chest hair.
Oh, God.
And he's got a walleye. Like I say walleye. My dad is a walleye, so I'm not trying to.
Is that like a
off.
lazy eye?
Yeah. So he's looking at me like this, but the other guy's looking over here, and I'm trying to figure out what he's looking at because I know he's loaded, right? I know he's carrying a gun.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, I'm not sure how this thing is going to go. And I was going to their organization, the organization they called it, right? There was an intelligence component. So I'm there selling this thing, the watch that counts to 10, with this guy, and then this little tiny guy that's with him is the money guy, and he's doing all the talking while Odd Job is staring at me with this,
one of his eyes,
with one of his eyes, and I'm not trying to make fun of this. It was hysterical. It was funny. I mean, I was trying not to laugh the whole time because it was so stupid, but it was so real. I mean, it was bad. So, anyways, I'm there to sell the watch that counts to 10. All of a sudden, my buddy over here, who's a real guy in government, all of a sudden they start talking about buying this very specific brand of machine guns and proximity fuses for projectable ordnance, right? And at some point in that thing, I go, wait a minute, we're not selling watches. We're selling proximity fuses for ordnance and various types of machine gun. Then they stopped talking, whatever else. They were going to Sudan, right? So they're talking about delivery to a certain place, and this big arms deal is going down at this beach house, and not beach house, but this nice looking house in Santa Monica that's in Ankara, Turkey. So we do this deal, and we say, okay. Then we go to the meeting that I was really there for to sell the watch that counts to 10. Is this making sense still?
So far, so good.
Okay, good. So I know this meeting that we're going to is with Erdogan's intelligence organization. I know that. They know I'm coming. I walk in the room, and there's a conference table, 10 chairs, any conference table in the world. I mean, any conference room in the world, could be wherever. There's a board, and I'm going to make my presentation on the board. I walk in, there's 3 guys at the table, and sitting down, and there's a guy standing over on the side looking out the window, this nefarious looking dope, right? And I go, okay, he's the guy, right? You make these assessments very simple and very quickly. There's nothing, I mean, anybody could, the game. So the guys turn around, and one of them stands up and shakes my hand. The other 2 just stare at me. It's all posturing. And so we go through the whole thing, and I'm making my pitch, and this guy from the window turns around like 45 minutes into this conversation. The guy at the window turns around and looks at me, and he goes, in perfect English, almost unaccented English, says, "Why would I listen to a former FBI agent who works for the CIA who talked about all the stuff on NBC come in here and sell me this watch that counts to 10?" And I said, because all your enemies already have.
Yeah.
Right? He has to. What he didn't know is that the watch that counts to 10 has a back door in the service agreement that downloads me everything he does.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Just a Trojan horse. So does that happen constantly in private industry? Yes, of course it does. You buy a phone and, Nokia or iPhone wants to listen and whatever else.
But Tim Cook's listening to our conversation right now.
Exactly. But that's a world we live in.
Yeah.
But what happens is that you get in these situations where somebody decides that it's not a good thing that they're doing with that. And then private industry decides to go in a certain direction that does not jibe with the Biden administration going to the Trump administration because all of the intelligence objectives change. Or a general gets fired, another one gets hired, and things change. It becomes outrageously complex because it's very difficult to tell what the common denominator is at any given time. Right? So you see that in business all the time. You start a hotel, it goes out of fashion, another one comes up, a new shoe, a podcast is up, a podcast is down. It's the world. But when you do it and the consequence is you lose a lot of money in investments, that's one thing. When the consequence is you just don't come home, that's a little different. And I like that. I like that consequence.
You like that consequence?
Yes.
It's more exciting to you?
I don't know if it's exciting. It's more complex. I like the problem-solving mechanism that goes along with that.
I see. So what are you doing now to scratch that itch now that you don't live in East Timor?
Right now I write books. And
is that doing it for you?
Well, it's not doing it in the same way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But here's, I'm not pitching a new book, but I got to say this. You know that story, the Brian Koberger case in Idaho?
Yeah. Oh, is he the guy who killed the college kids in the house? Yeah.
Pled guilty to killing 4 college kids in Idaho.
Yeah.
Horrible crime, tragedy in every imaginable way. And it is not what you think.
Say more about that.
I got access to I got to be careful what I say, but it's widely talked about. It's probably the most widely true crime case in quite some time.
For sure, yeah.
And the police department, meaning the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, various organizations have given out a lot of information. But under a 1964 Supreme Court case, Brady versus Maryland, the prosecution has to give all of their information to the defense, meaning everything, right? Exculpatory information and everything. And then the defense has to farm that out to get experts interpret it. Like we all know about the DNA in a knife sheath. We know about the cell phone tower pings. We know about the white car that was spotted. We know Bill Thompson's case, the prosecutor, we know about his case because he said at the hearing, the plea change hearing, what those things were. So a lot of this information is out there. What people don't know is that file's about 59,000 separate items comprising hundreds of thousands, well, I don't want to exaggerate, well over 100, approximating 200,000. No, this is not an exaggeration. well over 200,000 bits of information, data points in this thing.
Yeah.
Right? And hypothetically speaking, if somebody looked at that and had 6 months to analyze that, it is astonishing what people don't know and what actually happened. So I find the consequence extraordinary, because you have the murders of 4 young people, and you have a guy in prison for the rest of his life who pleaded guilty to this. And when people find out what happened, it'll be shocking.
Yeah. So
I have no theories. I don't speculate anything. All I do is line up documents as they were found and presented. And I don't know how to explain it, except that it's baffling.
It seems like a wide departure from setting up a security company in East Timor or meeting warlords in Afghanistan. You're like, next stop, true crime podcast.
Yeah.
It's
no, it's not a podcast. It's a book.
I know, I'm kidding, but it's like in a similar vein, right?
Yeah, you stay busy, man.
Yeah,
you got to find something.
So the complexity of that is what appeals to you.
The complexity appeals to me, and I did another one. I did another book that's coming out before or after that. I don't know. A cold case, 32-year-old cold case in Springfield, Missouri, and found the guy and solved the crime, and that was the same thing.
You found the guy and solved the crime?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, in writing the book. Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit? That's actually kind of crazy.
Okay, 1992, 3 women disappear from a house in Springfield, Missouri. It's called the Springfield 3. Google it. There are a very large number of blogs, podcasts, documentaries. It's been everything, 48 Hours, the Oprah Winfrey Show. It was a very, very widely known case. 33 years after the fact, I was saying, what am I going to do now? And I got access to the entire file. The case has never been closed in 33 years. The police department kept it open so they would not have to disclose information. Because if a case is open, it's not discoverable under Freedom of Information laws. FOIA requests.
Right. That's what journalists like us use to go, you have to tell me this. And they go, no, I don't. And then we say, well, I'm going to compel you to do it.
Right.
So the way around that is to go, sorry, this is an open
ongoing
investigation. Can't talk about it.
Well, that was the case for 33 years.
Yeah.
But I was friends with people that did the initial investigation. One of them took a bootleg file of the entire case and had it in his garage for 33 years.
Wow.
And he says, go get him, kid.
Wow.
And so I started going through it, and it was very obvious very quickly what happened. And it's taken all this time to get the police department. They're fully engaged with it right now. So it's fascinating. I don't want to blow the line, but the person, it was a mother, her daughter, and her daughter's friend disappeared after graduation on a Sunday night Saturday into Sunday morning, disappeared, and they've no clue has ever been found. Jeez. Nothing until now.
So you can't tell us what happened or who did it?
I can't. I don't want to tell you right now because that would blow the book, and I don't have the publication date on it.
Oh, it's not out yet. Okay.
No.
You did say that.
But I will say this: the case is not that far behind John Benet Ramsey in terms of people that know the case.
Yeah, sure.
And it's really fascinating, compelling, and the solution. What actually happened? I went out and interviewed one of the 2 guys that were involved in it, and the truth about what happened in this case is stunning. Stunning.
So you really like these complex. I got to get handed to you. Whenever I see these complex investigations, I just think, man, somebody's looking at all these grains of sand and just arranging them into a picture. I don't have the patience.
They don't. Oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have patience, but I'm disciplined. Like I don't have any patience, but if I've got a matter at hand, I can be very, very focused on it, and I find it fascinating. I really do.
This is so funny, right? Because it's like, what are you going to do when you retire? Oh, I'm going to do jigsaw puzzles. You see these old people doing jigsaw puzzles, and you're like, yeah, me too. But what you're doing is you're taking.
But I want 200,000 pieces and no picture.
And no picture on the front.
Just white.
That's right. And then you're going to make a page. So you're like the Chris Whitcomb version of the little old lady doing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I don't know what Chris Whitcomb is a version of anything. I have no clue, right?
Yeah.
No, people come on and they're a rapper or they're a sports star or they're a celebrity, whatever else, and their life makes sense. Mine doesn't make sense.
No,
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It is what it is.
That's true, man. Your book, or the one I read, will be linked in the show notes, and then the new one's coming out sometime. Maybe.
One of them is coming out in February, and one I think is coming out in April.
Okay, so we won't link.
But Anonymous Mail is the one here.
That's the one out.
And I wanted to come and talk to you, and you got to write a book to do it.
Yeah.
You know
well, in theory,
maybe. Yeah.
It's a good pitch when you have something that I can read. That's for sure. Man, I feel like I should have you leave us with another insane story. Is there anything maybe funny, slightly humorous, that and pure chaos that you can throw at us?
Let's play a game. Just pick up anything off the top of your head, some subject off the head, maybe off the top of your head. I'll see if I can come up with a story about it.
Actually, you know what? I have a question for you. You mentioned in the book that so you started doing those extraordinary renditions, and first of all, what is that process like? Because I know that. Tell us what that means, because a lot of people will think, "Oh, I've heard of that, but I don't know what that is."
There were two laws under the Reagan administration: 1984 and 1986. I think one was like the Diplomatic Security Act or something. They're very obscure laws, but you can Google them, and I talked about them. I cite them in the book.
Okay.
But at that time, the government looked for terrorists they wanted to arrest them and prosecute them. Mm-hmm. And prior to 9/11, there were a lot of them. When I left the FBI, the entity that I worked in, the FBI, we classified 66 different terrorist organizations as terrorist organizations.
Okay.
Including, I talked to somebody the other day about what's going on in Gaza with Israel. I've been to PLO headquarters in Gaza with Yasser Arafat with a machine gun under my jacket pocket. I'll show you a picture of it after this if you're interested in it.
Definitely.
So I had a lot of exposure doing these really out there things. But when the U.S. government decided somebody was bad and they needed to come back for justice, they would usually be hiding in a country that did not want to give them back.
Right, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So we'd have to go get them. So you don't just walk up, knock on the door, and show them an FBI badge and say, "Could you come with me, sir?" It doesn't work that way. So I will just use this as an example. There's a very famous case that people can Google where I think it was 12 CIA employees were arrested. Not arrested. They were indicted in Italy for an operation that went bad. And that was very, very widely publicized. So it would be that type of an operation. You put together a surreptitious entry into a reasonably denied area with the objective of arresting somebody, bringing them back to the United States, and trying them and putting them in jail. That's the idea. When you go into a country like that, you just don't show up and stay at a Marriott. Well, actually, you do show up and stay at a Marriott.
Okay, good.
But you're selling, you're selling like tripods for cameras or something, right?
Yeah.
And
got that titanium status.
Right. So that rendition means the extraction of someone charged under U.S. law at the time, charged under U.S. law, to be brought back without the consent of the government of the country you need to go in to get them.
Gotcha. Okay. And you say in the book, if you want someone tortured, you send them to Syria. If you want them disappeared, you send them to Egypt. If you want them interrogated, you send them to Jordan. So the uncomfortable question is, who gets tortured, who gets disappeared, and who just gets interrogated? What kind of people get put in each place?
Well, they're all bad.
Yeah. I would hope so.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's not true because, look, I've been to Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people that I didn't necessarily think were bad. And I can tell you this, doesn't matter who I thought was bad. Somebody else made that decision.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of the time they were wrong. We all know about enhanced interrogation and the compliance gestures and sticking a Doberman pincher on somebody where they're wearing women's underwear on their head. The abuses are widely written about. I was never the person that made that decision.
Yeah, wasn't there a 13-year-old kid at Guantanamo Bay?
Yes.
I mean, how can that guy be that? There's no scenario in which that kid
I wrote about this. I wrote about most of these stories I read about in the book. But when I went to Guantanamo Bay, it was surreal. When I was a little kid, there was this thing called what was it? It was a TV show, and it was what was it called? I can't remember. But it was this person was trapped on an island, and they were trying to escape, and this bubble would come over and like wrap them up every time to escape. A surreal island where nothing made sense. That was Guantanamo Bay. Mm-hmm. And I went down there and I saw how these prisoners were being held, who they were, what their process was like. And it would take 5 of these episodes just to explain that. Because a lot of the people doing these interrogations, I had trained. I taught interrogation for the FBI and to the CIA for a short period of time. But anyways, looking around this thing with a government minder, they'd show you, now we do this and they have a balanced meal and they get a Bible or they get a Quran and this is, there's an arrow pointing to Mecca. And then you go out there at night and you hear them screaming. I mean, it sounded like it was hell on earth in certain ways, right? And everybody that's walking around would greet each other not by saying, hey, how you doing this morning? Good morning. They would say fair, firm, and impartial. It was this mantra.
That's
everybody.
Creepy.
Creepy. You just walk around and everybody you see goes, fair, firm, and impartial. And you go, what? I mean, it was the way beyond that. Those were just stupid examples.
It's like a 1984
Yeah, it was just, the whole thing was surreal. Those were stupid examples. Writ large, it was bizarre. However, they had one little compound set off to the side. I think they called it Camp Iguana, but it was a house and a building, and it was completely surrounded by, it looked like a tennis court. The 10-foot fence with a green cloth that you have around tennis courts. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a green tarp.
Yeah.
So that you couldn't see in, but there was... They wouldn't admit at the time that it was a 13-year-old, but they had at the time they had 3 kids that were, 13 and younger.
That's
there.
Why?
But listen to this story. So the guy that ran Guantanamo Bay when I was there, his name was General Jeffrey Miller, and he left Guantanamo Bay to take over Abu Ghraib prison, where they had the dogs on guys with same guy.
Yeah.
And he had kids of his own. I don't know this. I talked to him, but I didn't ask him this question. But I was told by one of the people that worked for him that he was upset that these kids were being held on Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
So he cut a big square out of the green cloth in the 10-foot high concertina wall where they were imprisoned 12,000 miles from home so that they could look out into the ocean so it would make them feel better.
That's just it's so horrible somehow.
You just see things that in those situations, in my experience, you see so many things that don't make sense, so they don't end up in the New York Times and they don't end up on CNN. Mm-hmm. They do brilliant jobs. I'm not knocking those news agencies. I'm saying that the crazy shit that you see living in a life like mine, eventually... It all just seems like a Fusilli Jerry universe, It all seems just nonsensical.